Hello students, today we will be talking about the nomenclature of the discipline, which is the very first question of the first unit. While talking about the nomenclature, we will be basically focusing on two important questions. The first is why there are so many nomenclatures used for the discipline, and secondly, what are the reasons we use different nomenclatures for the discipline. We will be proceeding like this. First, we will be talking of the contested nomenclature for the discipline. Second, we will be talking of international politics and international relations, and then we will be differentiating between the two. Third, we will be talking of international studies. Fourth, we will be covering of the emergence of global politics and how that has affected the earlier use of the term international politics and international relations. Then we will be ending our discussion with certain important concluding points. Let us now focus on the contested nomenclature of the discipline. When you see the nomenclature of any other social science discipline, you will find that the nomenclature of international relations is highly contested and even debated. Many international scholars call it differently. Some call it as international politics, some call it as international relations, some call it as international studies, and even some call it as world politics. Definitely there is a overlap in the focus of all these nomenclatures, and that is the reason why many scholars, including academics, use these nomenclatures interchangeably, but these nomenclatures are different from each other. The adjective international was coined by the British political philosopher Jeremy Bentham in the year 1780 to capture relations among nations in a single word, and that he wrote in the book The Principles of Morals and Legislation. International in this sense means international. So I am using hyphen in between the two, international or interstate politics. As a student of political science, you may be knowing the difference between a nation and a state. A nation may have a common history, common culture, common language, common geography, but it is not a state unless and until it has 5 elements of state. The first is geography, the second is population, the third is government, the fourth is sovereignty, and the fifth is international recognition. Out of these 5 elements, sovereignty is considered as the most important one because that gives you the status of a state. Similarly, when we say international relations, basically it refers to the state-centric nature of the system, and that is the reason why we call international system as a state system. When we say it as a state system, it basically refers to the composition of various sovereign and autonomous states. Let me now focus on international politics. International politics term was used mostly in the post-Second World War period. For international scholars like Morgenthau, who is known as the father of modern realism in international politics, the core of international politics was the politics between and among the sovereign nation states, and that is the reason why he chose to write the title of the book as Politics Among Nations. For the realist and particularly for Morgenthau, power is understood as the key element in international politics, and that's why international politics was described as the struggle for power. International system was divided into a collection of states and functioning under the condition of anarchy. When I am saying anarchy, or for the realist, anarchy doesn't mean chaos or disorder. Rather, anarchy means there was the absence of any international authority that could control the sovereign states. This anarchical state-centric approach can be illustrated through a model called billiard ball model. Let me show you the billiard ball model of international politics. You can see how these balls are there and they can be equated with the working of the sovereign state system. They are different from each other. At the same time, they are operating in the same principle under the international politics. States are compared with billiard balls and are viewed as independent and autonomous entities. Sovereign states behave like a collection of billiard balls moving over the table and colliding with each other. Because you all are sovereign states, because you are all independent states, so you behave in a very different kind, and there is the possibility that you may collide, you may clash with the other states. So that is what the billiard model says. Collusion linked basically to the military and security matters. When your military issues and my military issues are different and we consider the same thing as important, so it is natural that we collide with each other. Power, self-help and survival are the key concerns. So as I said, nations are self-seeking entities, and the more you acquire power, the more you would be able to secure your national interest. And because all are independent states, all are sovereign states, so the only way you can secure your national interest is through the policy of self-help, and you always fear that other states may attack you, other states may occupy you. That's why you always think survival as your key concern. International politics is basically oriented mainly around issues of war and peace. So because there is a possibility of collusion, there is a possibility of war, so basically you as a scholar of international politics focused on these issues. Diplomacy, balance of power and possible military action constituted the principal forms of state interaction, right? So these were considered as different foreign policy tools by the realists, particularly for the sovereign and powerful nation states. The billiard ball model has two key implications. First, it accepts that there is a clear distinction between the domestic politics and international politics. So when we talk of domestic politics, we are talking of order, and when we are talking of international politics, we are talking of anarchy. And secondly, not all billiard balls are of the same size because of the uneven distribution of power in international politics. Political conflicts, the reasons behind those conflicts, conflict resolution fall within the purview of international politics. So these were the main issues for which the scholars of international politics worked and researched. Focus on competition and conflictual side of state interaction. So if you look at the issues like war, peace, diplomacy, balance of power and many other things, so basically those who highlighted those issues, they talked about or they covered about the conflictual and competitive nature of the states. Intergovernmental organizations and non-governmental organizations were studied for their impact on the political relations of states. The scholars who use the term international politics considers politics as an autonomous discipline. So the scholars who particularly talk of international politics, they highlight only the political aspects of the interaction between and among the sovereign states. Now let me focus on international relations. The scholars who use the term international relations focus on all kinds of interactions between and among the sovereign states. Those kind of interactions may be political, may be economic, may be social, may be cultural, may be scientific. It also includes state interactions with intergovernmental organizations, transnational corporations and non-governmental organizations. But for these scholars, state is considered as the only significant actor. So other actors are there, but they are not considered as primary like the states. Interaction is always asymmetrical rather than symmetrical. So there are other kinds of actors, but their interaction with the state is not based on equality. Rather, it is based on inequality or asymmetrical relationship. No transnational corporation or NGOs can rival the states in terms of its coercive power. So, state is not only the entity that possesses sovereignty, it also possesses coercive power which differentiates it from all other actors. Those who focus on cooperative side of interaction, they basically talk about international relation. So, we can make a difference here between those who focus on the conflictual side of state interaction. So, they use the term international politics, and those who talk about the cooperative relations between the sovereign states or among the sovereign states, they use the term international relations. Those who consider the term international relations, they highlight the multidisciplinary character of the discipline. You know, there are different kinds of approaches we use in political science in international relations. First is what is called disciplinary approach, the second is called interdisciplinary approach, the third is called multidisciplinary approach, and the fourth is called transdisciplinary approach. So when you do research or study your own discipline and you don't bother what is happening in other disciplines, that is called disciplinary approach. Interdisciplinary means more than one but limited to two. So when two subjects influence each other in terms of research, in terms of ideas, in terms of theory, in terms of methodology, that is called interdisciplinary approach. The third is called multidisciplinary. Multidisciplinary means more than two disciplines. When there is a research give and take between different social science disciplines such as history, political science, economics or sociology, that is called multidisciplinary approach. Right? In the multidisciplinary approach, you borrow ideas, concepts, methods and theories from other disciplines and also influence those disciplines. When we talk of transdisciplinary approach, it is based on two features. First, it is based on the unity of knowledge, that is, it doesn't believe in the existence of artificial boundaries between and among different social science disciplines. Second, it also believes that there is a research give and take between social sciences, natural sciences, medical sciences, arts and humanities or any other discipline. So, they are open for ideas, concepts, methods and theories from any other discipline for the sake of totality of knowledge or comprehensive knowledge. So, after discussing what is international politics and international relations, you can yourself make a difference between the two. For instance, international relations is much wider and broader in scope than international politics. We already discussed that in international politics, only the political aspects of interstate relations are highlighted, but in international relations, not just political but non-political interactions are given priority. So, there is a difference between the two. Now, let me talk about international studies. Scholars particularly focuses on this term because of its wider scope. Those who use international studies as a nomenclature for our discipline, they basically focus on societies, cultures, languages and systems of government. So, just see how this international studies term is different from international relations, because they focus only on state interactions and to a limited extent states interactions with non-state entities. But here they not only focus on the states and non-state actors, they also focus on societies, cultures, language and comparison between different forms of government. Their focus is not limited, rather they focus on planetary and humanity issues and their impact on the globe. So basically they are talking not just about the states and states interactions with non-state entities. Rather, they are talking of the humanity, they are talking of the globe, they are talking of the whole planet. They also see the big picture, not just the details. If something is happening, they not only just go through why it is happening, rather they look at the big picture, they analyze the big picture, they consider the big picture. But for the scholars of international studies, they will not just look at the ripple, rather they will look at the whole pond. So that differentiates international relations and international studies from each other. Now let me talk about global politics. Basically, the whole concept of global politics is identified with the works of Joseph Nye and Robert Cohen in their famous work called Transnational Relations and World Politics, which they published in the year 1972. They are of the view that it is difficult to sustain the state-centric approach due to increased globalization and global interdependence. You know how the present world is not only interconnected, it is also closely linked with each other. You know how the concept of globalization, information technology revolution, economic liberalization, they have made it possible for the whole world to get integrated and interconnected. They are also of the view that the transnational corporations and non-governmental organizations exert influence on the working of international politics, although in a different way and through different approaches. You can cite the example of Al-Qaeda, Amnesty International, Google, Facebook, Infosys, Reliance and Adani, how they shape world politics and in what way they are playing an important role in world politics. The concept of global politics is also based on mixed actor model and the cobweb model of complex interdependence given by Joseph Nye and Robert Cohen. As you can see in the next slide, this is how we can understand the cobweb model. Here there are so many lines, but they are not a clear-cut line, and each line is connected with the other in a very complicated way, in a very different way. Other scholars who believe in the concept of global politics, they argue for a borderless and transplanetary approach. Basically, how the concept of globalization, concept of economic liberalization, how it has made the boundaries irrelevant, how the concept of sovereignty is losing its importance. So this is how they are talking of the borderless and transdisciplinary world. So the concept of global politics has multiple meanings. First, global means worldwide, that is the whole planet or the whole of humanity, not we can divide them into different parts or different units. You can take the example of United Nations that has attained universal membership and it is also called as a global organization. We also talk about global issues like environment, terrorism or the issue of global capitalism. Second, global means comprehensive, that is worldwide, regional, national, sub-regional and so on. So when we say comprehensive, it doesn't mean we believe in the great divide, that is the division between the domestic politics and international politics. Finally, those who focus on global politics, they also focus on global, not international governance. Earlier we focused on international governance, that was a loose kind of governance model meant for the interstate relations. But the concept of global governance is a model that not only looks at the interest of the state, rather it also looks at the interest of state actors and also the non-state actors. Now let me focus on the search for a correct nomenclature. After discussing the whole concept of international politics, international relations, international studies and world politics, definitely you may be thinking that what should be the correct nomenclature for our discipline. Let me explain that those who are talking of the borderless world or state is dead and the sovereignty is irrelevant, we still think that these are all fanciful ideas because it is the states who facilitated the globalization process and projects. So you can't think of globalization without the rule of the states. So still we are governed by the states, although other international actors are there, but the states, they have retained their monopoly and they are still dictating the terms of international engagement. Secondly, the states are also considered as primary providers of military security. This you can find in the context of the present war between Russia and Ukraine or Hamas and Israel. So we may be talking of different actors in international politics, but when it comes to military security, it is the state that provides security to its citizens. Then it is the states that articulate these national communities' voices. So if you have to take a position in international organization, if you have to take a position in international politics, so it is your state that represents the population and take a common view on the basis of its population. So if India wants to take a position on Kashmir, so it is the Indian state that has to take that position. If Pakistan has to take a position on Kashmir, they have to take a position in the United Nations, and that position is taken by the Pakistani state. The states are indispensable to global economic exchanges. You must have seen in recent years how America and the countries belonging to the West, they have imposed economic sanctions against Russia to dissuade it from its war from Ukraine. So the global and international are complementary to each other and should not be seen as rivals. We have seen how the importance of the term international is still there because of the importance given to the states. Also, we cannot forget the emerging issues, the emerging actors that also in a very significant way influence the working of international politics. So now let me end the discussion with some important concluding points. First, IR should incorporate global perspective as we have discussed, because there are many things pointed out by the global perspective that we can't ignore for the study of international relations. So it is needed that international relations should also incorporate those issues and concerns highlighted by the global perspective approach. Secondly, we should not forget that relevant research and theorization has been done in international relations. So those who talk about realist theory, those who talk about liberal theory, those who talk about Marxism, they have all done work keeping in view of the states or focusing on the states. So global issues are important, so also theories and perspectives that base their analysis on the nation states. Second, do you think that international relations is a global discipline? It is actually not, because it doesn't give importance to non-Western forms of knowledge, particularly the perspective from the global south in terms of their history, in terms of their culture, in terms of their writings, in terms of their civilization. So these are not reflected in the present concept of international relations. In fact, the debates and disputes we have discussed in the context of the nomenclature of the discipline might have caused confusion and frustration to you, because you still may be thinking that what is this, that we don't agree to the nomenclature of a discipline, why there is international relations, why there is international politics, why there is world politics, why there is international studies, and you may be still approaching that still we are not agreeing to a common point that whether it is actually international or not. You may now be thinking that we have settled with the term international relations and we can use this term without any controversy, without any debate. But international relations is yet to be a truly global discipline, because it still doesn't cover the non-Western forms of knowledge derived from their history, culture, civilization and writings. You may also finding it's confusing and frustrating that there are lots of controversies and debates in the field, but it must be mentioned that contestation advances human knowledge. there may be debate, there may be discussion, there may be argument, there may be counter argument, but this is how we advance our knowledge in social science disciplines. So, we would be using the term international relations for our discipline, but at the same time we will follow it with a global perspective, which we have discussed earlier. So, thank you for your patient hearing.